This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi, and welcome back to another short, thought-provoking episode of Demystifying Mental Toughness. This time I delve into the archives with the author of the Modern Soccer Coach series, Gary Curneen. Episode 96 was where he opened up on an expensive mistake that he made on his coaching journey. He also talks a lot about humility and the importance of integrating the psychological side of the game better. This episode is for coaches, especially those who are confident in their ability, as you'll know where I share my thoughts at the end. So Gary, from your book, you mentioned the ultimate goal of training is to prepare athletes to perform at their best in important competitions. So how important, do you think the psychological part is actually integrated from coaches and specialists? How effective is it?
Wow, two questions there. Like, how important is it? Very. How effective is our teaching? Probably not very, as we're getting more and more kind of information, or we're, I suppose, from my perspective, learning either what doesn't work or learning where the holes are and questioning. And I think as you move up the ladder in coaching, you almost do realize that either traditional practices were flawed or habits, processes that you've had in place, and maybe you have tested them and road tested certain, frameworks, and then you're questioning, second guessing them, and that's, I do that a lot. And I think to the first one, how important, I do think that the psychological does underpin every say. Like I wrote a book on the four dimensional, which is similar to the four corners of development. With I would say at the senior level, the difference is that the tactical is a corner by itself, because the game is so tactical, physical, and then the mental I would probably put mental, emotional / so it's but that would be me not being an expert in your field. As I'm going down that, I would have had that as basically a square with four corners. And now in my life, where I'm looking at the game, it's almost becoming a circle, and it's almost becoming a mesh where the psyche is so important. Like and working with senior players, where my learning has been in the last couple of years, where you're working with players that have higher ranges of skill, higher ranges of physical abilities, and more commitment, better focus, blah blah blah. But it almost rises and falls by the mental, psychological side of the game, and I think that's where we are as coaches now, where I think we've gone backwards. I hope that we're going backwards to go forwards, but I think we've gone backwards, and maybe we've compartmentalized the teaching of it. We've gone a bit to, the tactical side of it, and the sports science side of it, but it doesn't matter if the player can run X amount in X distance at X time, if the player's not motivated or interested or engaged in doing it. And I think that's where we're currently looking at maximizing every moment we have with our players. And if they're in this society, especially if they're not there mentally and emotionally, you have no chance of maximizing that time. So I think it's a really interesting era for coaches, because I think there's more pressure, more distractions, and more information, and how we decipher around how we operate in that there. I think it takes a great deal of humility to understand that, like, player A is different from B, the motivations that, and just understanding that probably a lot of what you're going to do here is going to fall on deaf ears. You're going to have to keep going and keep, and catch yourself getting wrong in the same way you do in a match. You might lose on a Saturday and you go again, and maybe you have to do that with players these days.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I must admit I'm in agreement with you, but obviously I'm a bit biased, where I would have the psychology bit in a ring in the middle, and then on the outside, the technical, tactical definitely is a separate physical, and social come lifestyle. Because really, I mean, if you think about it, it does start in the mind, doesn't it? Whether a player decides they want to listen to the coach and carry out instructions, or whether they want to put in the extra yards in their training. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's my thought on it. Just take it back though to, you mentioned about the sports science side, and obviously numbers, stats are a big part of the game there now. What are your experiences in terms of the way they're used in actually helping a player perform better in terms of building their confidence up?
Yeah, I've gone. Yeah, I could do an extra. I could go on a rant here. I've gone way across. I've started being probably about 2 years ago. My experiences with the science were more. I felt it was more detrimental, and I felt that it capped performance in terms of the fact that I felt that the numbers that were given to coaches were, in terms of training load, that were just generic numbers. That you need to have someone that if Team A trains with a training load in Team B, and they do a 5v5 exercise, that 5v5 exercise is going to look different in any culture. There's intensity, there's actions, there's driving from the coaches, there's quality. And I think now, again, as we get more information, then we should be better equipped. And I think, again, the level of humility to be like, this is a funny story. I bought a set of heart rate monitors in 2014 when I was a college coach, with the specific goal of using that information to tell player X that they weren't working hard enough in a training session. And this thing cost like $3,000 to $4,000 from my budget. And I couldn't wait to, hook it up and do all this. And did it, brought the player in, at the graph and all this here, and this is you compared to players B, and player B works really hard, and look, you can see here that you haven't worked really hard. And she was, I always remember, like, she was like, yeah, that one, you could tell that it didn't really, it didn't make an impact. And B, when we started talking about why it didn't make an impact, well, she would then have, well, but I was playing in this position, and well, what about this other player who doesn't work as hard and they play? And I think with players, it's, as coaches, what I learned was that you can have this, you kind of have this dialogue with yourself of like, yeah, everyone can see what I'm thinking. And then you actually get evidence to back that up, but you can still miss. And that's what I want. And I realized, like, once I realized after that meeting, the things were done. Like, I'd wasted $4,000 of the school's money on machines. So after that, I was in a bad spot with that, because they got put me in a negative with science. But I worked with someone in my recent role here, and she was so good on, well, what are we trying to get out of it? Spaces, sizes, these numbers can help lead us to what we're trying to get out of it. And it wasn't that the numbers were the objective. It was the numbers were part of the process, in the same way that there was a tactical objective, there was a physical objective, and in the same way is there too much information in the pre-game, in the pre-training meeting? Well, is there too much load? And just had a really, really, I would say, holistic way of implementing it in a soccer culture. And again, going back to the compartmentalization, I think that's part of, I think as a coach today, like, do you have to be science savvy? Do you have to be psych savvy? And I don't think you have to be an expert, but I do think that you have to know where they all, I think you have to have a very, not even a basic, I think you have to have a decent understanding of what you know and what you don't know. So then when you bring in that expert can collaborate with you alongside S&C, alongside maybe it's psych, maybe it's technical. Or everyone because everyone eventually wants more time with the players. But I think then in an elite environment, it's all aligned and cohesive. So that's where I think that science has a massive, massive role. I would say that, and I've done podcasts with like Tony Strudwick. I think he's been really good in this area about how sports science has almost limited our minds. And I think the great thing about the game today is that I had Jim McGuinness on, who had worked with Roger Schmidt at Beijing, and he's saying, well, the great coaches today are just, they're not even, like Brad Friedel said, they're not even working off a number. They're just creating their own, pushing. And I think that's what soccer should be in every area. Like, it should, tactically, we should be pushing to an extent, and psych ways we should be looking at improving, and fitness ways we should be doing the same. So I do think there's a real need for it, but I think, skilled on both sides, probably, in terms skilled in the practitioner in terms of delivering, and then also skilled in the facilitator or head coach, assistant coach environment of getting the most out of everyone.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that short bite, and Gary's wise words did get you to question yourself and your approach. It was interesting to hear Gary use the word humility a number of times, so I'm going to jump on that theme and help you again question yourself further and reflect on your coaching. So here's one definition of the word humility that I've come across: the quality of having a modest or low view of one's importance. That's right, I'll repeat it. Quality of having a modest or low view of one's importance. So, as confidence and life control are measures of mental toughness, I'm going to approach my ramblings from this angle. I'm generalising, however, you do tend to find coaches are fairly confident individuals. And being confident, this means that they think they're pretty good at their role. They feel good about their skill set. They're positive in the way that they think and communicate. They're enthusiastic, they're passionate about what they do. And then in terms of life control, they tend to have a can-do attitude towards their coaching and life in general. All good things, I'm sure you'll agree. So maybe there's an argument to say, because of this inner confidence and this inner self-worth, if you like, that they don't necessarily view themselves from the standpoint of having a low view of their importance. So take the person who doesn't believe in themselves and suffers from low self-esteem. Often they don't have a great deal of time for themselves and are excessively self-critical. And back to coaches, you can look at this potentially in two ways, I'd suggest. You'll have coaches who are confident, yet they're very self-aware and recognise this about themselves. They'll understand that not everyone can think like they do. They'll be emotionally intelligent in the way that they understand the emotions of people around them. So when it comes down to these less confident individuals, these people who don't necessarily believe in themselves, who have feelings of low self-worth and low self-esteem, perhaps if we think about athletes, the coach that has these skills will recognise that the athlete's expectations of themselves aren't helping their confidence. They'll recognise that because the athlete has a can-do attitude, that they're likely to get caught up in negative thinking and possibly overthinking things. They'll also appreciate that the athlete who struggles with their confidence can focus too much on external factors, which means that they'll go round and round in circles. So, the coach who is self-aware, who is emotionally intelligent, I would say will likely have researched how to help these athletes. They'll be patient with them, and they'll communicate in a sincere way to help them improve, because they'll recognise that, okay, the athlete might not be the most confident, but over time they can develop that confidence with the help of great coaching. Now, the second example would be the coach who, again, is very confident, very self-assured, however, doesn't have much self-awareness nor emotional intelligence. The result this time can mean that they don't look outside of the box on how to motivate and how to inspire others. To the struggling athlete who has low confidence and lower self-esteem, they may well appear rude, and then the put-downs that they put in place can really, really hurt the athlete without the coach recognising this. So I'd suggest, at the end of the day, a sport coach's job is to assist athletes in developing their full potential and to enjoy the sporting experience as much as they can. So I'm hoping, really hoping, that this episode simply gets you to question yourself as a coach. That's my aim, so that you can improve and your athletes can improve too. And again, as we say about this whole enjoying the experience, everybody can enjoy the experience so much more. And so that I don't offend anyone, I'm aware that there are plenty of great coaches out there, and many coaches who aren't actually confident individuals too, and maybe struggle themselves with their own self-worth. And it's important for us to recognise this, and that individual differences do play a big part in our roles. The environment does, different situations that impact on our lives. It's complex to say the least, whether you're a coach, whether you're an athlete, or whether you're a sports psychologist like me. Let's be honest, no one is perfect. We've all got our strengths, and then the trade-offs of these strengths mean that we fall into traps too. And as humans, we get comfortable. We love getting comfortable, so we fall into bad habits. So, yeah, I'm going to repeat again. I really do hope this episode has made you question yourself and your approach. Feel free to reach out to me via email and share your thoughts. Also, I've mentioned recently about a new venture for those interested in football, and certainly the mindset, the mental side of football. I'm going to be setting up a new project called The Football Psychology very, very soon. And what is this? Well, it's going to be an educational platform which has got football or soccer specific resources in there, including podcast episodes, blogs, videos, all with the aim of improving the experience of those involved in football. The first thing to watch out for is a series of 10 podcast episodes coming out very soon on Tuesday, the 3rd of October. That's when the first episode will come out. Then, on a Tuesday, for the next 10 weeks, you'll find the other episodes come out. I'll share more detail on this series of 10. In the meantime, enjoy your week. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.